Sharon McCarthy is a parent in an autism and additional needs household in rural Cork. Sharon has advocated for her family for many years to ensure additional physical and health needs are met and her children are afforded equitable opportunity to very much realise their potential. Some time ago, as part of all this, Sharon set up Autism Journeys, and Sharon joins us on the line now to tell us more. Sharon, thank you for your time today.
Hi Arthur, thank you for having me on the show.
It's great to chat to you, Sharon. Sharon, tell us, give us a bit of a background. I spoke there briefly about an autism and additional needs household. Paint the picture of how Autism Journeys came about in terms of your work for your children and so forth.
I will, absolutely. So I suppose, Arthur, I have 6 children and 5 of my children have additional needs. They range from autism to dyspraxia to dyslexia to anxiety to mental well-being challenges and so on and so forth. So we've been dealing with these kind of neurodiverse conditions for about 23 years now at this point. I suppose over the years I would have met with many difficulties around accessing and acquiring educational supports, for example, or I suppose even being met with a lack of understanding out in the community and so on. And I suppose for that reason I would have become very impassioned with trying to ensure that my children would have access to whatever they need so that they can become the best versions of themselves. So about 10 years ago, actually, I went back to college and I spent the next 7 years back in college studying, and I've since qualified with a diploma in autism studies, a degree in disability studies, a master's in autism studies, and I've also qualified as an advocate. So I suppose my experiences as a parent have led me down a completely different path to where I would have been 20 years ago, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I suppose with regards to being a parent, Arthur, oftentimes one of the biggest challenges that many parents of autistic children face is that they feel a little bit isolated, a little bit lost. They're kind of unsure as to what the next step is to take following a child's diagnosis. And I suppose part of the Autism Journeys ethos is to support parents and to ensure that they have access to that kind of post-diagnostic piece, not only for the child, but also for themselves, so that they're empowered with the fact that they know that they've got this and that they are the person best positioned to meet their child's needs.
I tell you, listening to you speak there, I was really impressed. A diploma, a degree, a master's, and qualifying as an advocate while having 6 children. Well done to you, I say.
Oh,
well
God.
Done.
I so that's my headspace. I think it's I enjoy learning, so I suppose it's always easier when you do.
Well done, I say, well done. So at this point, you've developed and actually delivered quite a number of training workshops and lectures.
That's right.
So this covers, of course, a whole range of topics. You're talking about sensory processing and anxiety and so forth. Tell us about this training you offer.
So I suppose it's multi-component. First and foremost, I suppose, in the fact that I teach on night courses in the Cork College of Commerce, autism-specific courses in the college, short courses to, again, equip teachers and educators and so on and so forth with means and strategies to be able to best support the young person in their lives. I suppose then I offer standard trainings, we'd say, around supporting young people in the classroom, around supporting young people with regards to transitioning, around sensory processing and anxiety and so on and so forth. And I also offer bespoke training. So I've done a number of trainings where I have different businesses or companies have approached me and asked me to organise something specifically to meet their client or service user or their own children, the children in their classes' needs. I suppose the other thing that I have done, Arthur, in more recent times, I've done a number of free trainings actually over the COVID-19 pandemic online, offering webinars on anxiety and environmental modification and so on. And I've also collaborated quite a bit with a lovely woman by the name of Dr. Michaela Connolly, who is the senior child and educational psychologist based here in South These Services to Cork. I suppose along with that, how would I put it? I suppose my passion around that training piece again, Arthur, is quite literally equipping people with the strategies to best support the autistic person in their lives, But it's really important, and I suppose a core piece of that training that I do offer is around keeping that autistic person's voice central and maintaining their autonomy and respect for their needs at all times.
Okay, you also offer consultancy with parents and families, but before we actually discuss that, just so we can get a true handle, tell us, it's perhaps a difficult question to answer in the sense that because it's quite wide-ranging, but autism itself, what exactly is autism?
I suppose there's so many different definitions and so many different ideas as to what autism is these days. I suppose I consider it to be a neurodevelopmental difference whereby people communicate differently. They may present with difficulties around social interaction and social communication. Now, I suppose I come from the academic perspective where all these theorists and so on have stated that, it's a difficulty with this and a deficit with that and so on and so forth. However, I suppose I'm hoping that the narrative is starting to change and that people are saying, well, absolutely, people have difficulty around social interaction and around social communication, but actually that an awful lot of the difficulty that one would face into is because of that environmental piece, where if an environment is conducive to the person's needs, that then suddenly it becomes a very strength-focused environment. So I suppose whilst we do look at challenges around that social interaction and social communication piece, it's really important as well that we do actually acknowledge that there's huge strengths in autism and that there are huge talents. There are huge. I know that I've got one young person in this house who engages with lots of stimming behaviour, that kind of self-stimulatory behaviour. And when he's excited, when he's happy, when he's sad, when he's cross, however he's feeling, he does this beautiful kind of a sensory motor movement with his hands, and it's actually it's absolutely wonderful to watch because he really regulates himself and he really sets himself up for success when engaging with this. I suppose the other thing to say, Arthur, is that when we think about the official criteria for one to acquire an autism diagnosis, not only do you have to have significant difficulty with that social communication and interaction, individuals are expected to also present with a very kind of a restricted or focused patterns of behaviour and routines. Now, again, I suppose some people think that it may be considered a barrier, and sometimes it can be a barrier in that the person can be very, very focused on what they're looking at, or their special interest, or whatever the case may be. But I suppose the other side, and the flip side of that, is that an individual who has this absolutely intense focus and this passion for something, a topic, an object, whatever the case may be, that oftentimes they are the best person and the most knowledgeable person that you could ever meet with regards to information on this. So oftentimes that intense focus or that repetitive and restricted passion of behaviour or interest becomes a career choice as the young person gets older and so on. So I suppose for me, although I'm very aware that there's very clinical ways in which to identify somebody as autistic, and I'm aware that there are certain language pieces that need to be used in order to access different supports and so on. For me, I think we need to start flipping that narrative and start looking at the strengths and ways in which to propel the person forward and make sure that they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Does that make sense? A long-winded way of answering your question.
It was very good. It was a very good answer. Tell us, you mentioned about diagnosis and presenting with autism. In terms of resources that our healthcare system actually offers to parents and indeed children and adults with autism, give us an understanding of what is available and indeed how, no doubt, the system could be improved.
I suppose at the moment, the public access system is through a thing called the Assessment of Need. Now, the Assessment of Need was was written under the Disability Act in 2005, and it wrote into legislation that it is every person's legal right to access support, to have an assessment to see where their needs would lie. So any child born after the 1st of June 2007, they would have been entitled to have this assessment of need. I suppose with regards to autism specifically, because there has been such a demand for autism-specific assessments, the waiting lists have become longer and longer. Now, legally speaking, somebody should be able to access this assessment need, and the whole process should be completed within 6 months from start to finish. Unfortunately, particularly in Cork, because we've got quite a high waiting list, a very, very large number of people waiting on the list. Some people are waiting 2 and 3 years for any kind of an assessment. So I'm finding that the parents that I'm meeting at the moment, that they are accessing assessments privately. Now, I do think it's really important to say, Arthur, that there are some professionals out there offering and presenting these assessments as a multidisciplinary disciplinary assessment. That would mean that there would be a number of different clinicians looking at the child and assessing the child and where they're at and so on and so forth, and working collaboratively to make sure that the child that they acquire the correct diagnosis. Unfortunately, there are some people who are saying that they are offering this service when in fact they are individuals who are offering just their own perspective. Now, the problem with this is that under newest guidelines with regards to the Department of Education, from April 30th, 2019, a child to acquire a specialist school placement or to acquire an autism class placement, they have to have a multidisciplinary assessment, or else it will not suffice, and it will not enable the person to access even a waiting list for one of these. So it's really important that any parent who is looking to go about an autism assessment or to inquire about an autism assessment privately, that they need to make sure that there is a multidisciplinary assessment on offer. Now, I do have access to clinicians both northly and southly. Should anybody want those numbers, just in case that they do want to access people. I suppose the other thing to say with regards to somebody who's living in our catchment area now, Arthur, in the southly area, you cannot access a public clinician in a private capacity when you're living in Southleigh from the Southleigh services, because it's considered a conflict of interest. So for that reason, you would have to go to a Northleigh clinician, or you might have to go to a North Cork clinician. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so, I suppose nothing, shall we know that nothing in our medical or healthcare system is straightforward, and it's just, everything is complicated. But I suppose first and foremost, the most important thing that people can do, I suppose, just to start, like if they're at the beginning of their journey, is to Google. You can literally Google the assessment of need application form. I do have the assessment of need. I have a link to the assessment of need on my website, should anybody want to go through the useful links and find it there. So you download the form, you fill it out, and you post it off. There are a couple of great Facebook pages. There is the DCA Warriors is one Facebook page. There's Autism Mammies Ireland, and there's Irish Autism Mammies as well, are both two other Facebook pages where there's lots and lots of peer support around that kind of navigating as you get ready to organise an assessment for your child. And I suppose if you are looking to go privately around an assessment, it's really important that you research properly, and that you, where possible, if you can access somebody who has been recommended, it makes it better. You just have that extra kind of component level of making sure that the child is going to be looked after properly.
Okay, there's a huge amount of information on your website, autismjourneys.ie. Of course, there's details of parental consultancy, there's details of bespoke training, visuals program. There's a huge amount of information and resources there as well. So it's incredible to hear your story, Sharon. I really appreciate your time. Autismjourney.ie, and your face, I imagine you're on social media as well.
I am. I suppose, Arthur, just to let people know, anybody who is looking to learn about autism and so on, I actually do have a podcast myself. I used to be based in UCC, University College Cork, and their radio station, but because of COVID-19 and because they were updating and revamping studios, I had to move out of the studio. So I've now commenced publishing podcasts myself. There is a Facebook page called Autism Journeys Radio Show and Podcast. And if people Google that, there is a wealth of information there as well. Additionally to that, on both SoundCloud and on Spotify, there are over 80 podcasts to date where people can sit down and listen and hear from different kinds of voices, from autistic individuals to parents of children who are autistic, to bloggers, to writers and authors, right up to world-leading experts in the field. So individuals like Tony Ashwood or Simon Baron Cohen or Dr. Luke Bearden, for example. There's a huge wealth of information, and it's a free resource. In essence, it's a free resource. So rather than going out and having to buy 100 books and having to pay like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of euros, if you're starting out and if you're trying to figure out what to do or where to go or to deal with certain issues or whatever, you can go through those, and there is a blurb under each podcast that lets you know what's being discussed. Okay. So it's just a really good free resource. And again, as I say, that's on autism. Like there's a pinned post on the top of Facebook, on the Facebook page, called Autism Journeys Radio Show and Podcast, and it'll bring you directly actually to SoundCloud through that. And there's also a link to both SoundCloud and Spotify on the website too, should anybody want to click on those podcasts just to listen in and see if any information is valid to them.
Very good. Just give us your website one last time, if you would.
It's www.autismjourneys.ie.
autismjourneys.ie. Sharon McCarthy of Autism Journeys, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Arthur, thank you so much for having me on the air.
This is Life FM. This is Life FM. This is Life